Hey Deployment Insiders, welcome to a new episode. Today we want to cover servicing profiles. Again, we go deep. What is actually going on in the background once you enable the service and what is happening on your devices. So let's get started.
Hey everyone. So as Martin mentioned, in this video, we want to give you a deeper look at servicing profiles in the Microsoft 365 Apps Admin Center. Now, if you're not familiar with the Apps Admin Center or what a servicing profile can do, check out the description below. We'll have some links to some additional resources on these topics. Today, we're going to focus in on 4 steps to adopting a servicing profile. Step number 1, we want to go through the configuration, how to configure and set up a profile in your tenant. Step number 2, we're going to go through the commands or cloud policies that the servicing profile creates based on the settings you've defined. Step number 3, we're going to look under the hood on the endpoint at these cloud policies and cover the end user experience when the updates are applied. And then step number 4, we'll cover some of the additional features that our team's been hard at work releasing over the last 6 months to improve the capabilities of servicing profiles. Now, along the way, we'll take some time and talk about tips and tricks and some troubleshooting techniques that you can leverage in your environment in the event things aren't working as expected. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in.
All right, as a first step, we have to configure the servicing profile to tell the servicing profile which devices it should see as in scope. And so then the servicing profile will update these devices to be on monthly enterprise channel, to be on the latest version. So this can be seen here. Whatever we configure, the desired end state of a device is that it's running a monthly enterprise channel installation of the Microsoft 365 apps and it's running the latest version. So let's switch to the settings tab. If you're doing this for the first time in your tenant, there will be a first run experience which looks very similar to the settings tab. So on this tab, I can select the rules or the criteria or how a servicing profile decides if a device should be under control of the servicing profile when it comes to Office updates or should be left alone. So for this demo, I will configure a very basic scenario. So monthly enterprise channel is always selected. So if you enable servicing profile, the monthly enterprise channel machines which are already on this channel will always be in scope and be updated to the latest release. For this scenario, I'm also selecting a beta channel and current channel preview. Maybe I have these devices in my environment, I've seen it in inventory, but the update pace is too fast for me and I want to basically dial them back to be on a monthly update cadence. So I could go with this, I go with the default disk space. I do not want to exclude devices which are using macros. I do not want to exclude devices which are using add-ins. So I hit save, and with this or with completing the first run experience, I'm triggering the servicing profile to do a full validation of the inventory. So when we look at the inventory in the Apps Admin Center, what now happens is that the servicing profile will look at all devices which are listed there. So that's a prerequisite. We can only apply the servicing profile to devices which are visible in your Apps Admin Center inventory. If devices are missing from inventory, they will be missing from servicing profile as well. So it takes each individual device which is listed here and then runs it through a check against all these selection criteria. So for example, it takes my first machine and checks, is the machine of one of the selected channels? If yes, it continues. Is the disk space above the threshold the admin has selected? Yes. Do I need to exclude the device based on the macro control? No. Do I need to exclude the device based on the add-in control? No. So the device has passed all checks and so will be added to the servicing profile. And so it continues to go through your whole inventory and does these checks for each individual device. After the initial configuration of the servicing profile, this might take several hours. We usually say up to 24 hours to do the check across all devices. And then after 24 hours, you should see all the devices listed on the Devices tab, which are in scope of your servicing profile. It might be that after a few hours, the first few devices pop up, but roughly after 24 hours, the whole pre-calculation should be done. And because we have the information from the inventory, the servicing profile is not only checking if the device is in scope or not. For all devices which are in scope, it can also, even if the devices are offline, based on the inventory data, pre-calculate if there's an action required. So for example, in my tenant, I have 3 devices which are already on the monthly enterprise channel, already on the latest build, so they are flagged as complete. So because at least this month, there's nothing to do. They are absolutely fine. But there are 2 devices which are not on the right update channel, so they are on a different channel than monthly enterprise, or they are not on the latest release of the monthly enterprise channel. So the service then is pre-staging in the background the necessary actions for these devices. So when the devices come online the next time, it can directly send the required commands to these devices. So these 2 are listed as not started because the service is waiting for these devices to come online so it can instruct the devices to perform an update to the right channel, to the right version. This list or the scoping list is re-evaluated on a regular basis. So with devices joining the inventory, or if devices were offline for an extended time and they are dropped from inventory, or maybe there was an Office reinstall on one of the machines, or disk space is free, or a machine is now very tight on disk space. With these informations flowing back to the inventory, the servicing profile in the background on a regular basis re-evaluates if devices are still in scope or out of scope. So not only when you configure them for the first time, this list will be built, but roughly every 24 hours, this list will be updated to show the current status of which devices are in scope for the servicing profile. All right, so that's step number 1. We selected which devices we want to target. The servicing profile has identified which devices are targeted, and it has identified already what are the necessary changes required for each individual device. So the work in the backend is done. Let's switch to the actual device and see what's going on there. After step 1, the service knows about which devices are in scope and what are the actions which should be performed on the devices. So let's look at an individual device to see how the device actually learns about the pending actions. When you check the task scheduler on devices which are connected to an Apps Admin Center, you will find a scheduled task called Office Serviceability Manager. By default, this runs every 90 minutes and makes the connection, for example, to upload an updated inventory. But at the same time, if the device is in scope of the servicing profile, it will receive a set of commands, for example, to update to the next version of the monthly enterprise channel release. We can check this when we look at the registry and look at the Serviceability Manager location, which is HKey Local Machine, Software Microsoft Office, Click to Run Serviceability Manager. You will see a value called Service Profile ID with an unique ID in it. So this means this device is part of a servicing profile. And after it has sent down the instructions, what actually must be done on the machine, we can look at another section, which is HK Local Machine again, Software Policies, Microsoft Cloud Office 16.0, Common Office Update. And there we see one important value, which is ignore GPO, which is set to 1. This value instructs the Office Update engine on the device that this device is under servicing profile control, and the Office Update engine should ignore commands coming from other solutions like Config Manager, Endpoint Manager, or through other GPO controls. So with this set to 1, the Office Update Engine is aware, okay, Servicing Profiles is around and it's telling me what to do. And what to do we can see in the other registry values which are created here. For example, we can see, of course, this machine should go to monthly enterprise if it's not already, or it should update to a specific version, which is the latest version. Or if we roll back a device, you will see, of course, a target version here, which is lower latest release because this device is going through a rollback. So this is how the information is stored on the device, and then this servicing profile is using an API to trigger the actual update. Coming back to the ignore GPO value, on devices which are out of scope for servicing profile, you might also see this value, ignore GPO, but then it's set to 0. So the local Office Update Engine knows it should follow the regular update instructions coming from Configuration Manager or Endpoint Manager or through GPO, and not follow the instructions from the servicing profile. In the registry, you might still see the values which were set before, as on my demo machine, but they will not be followed as long as the device is out of scope for the servicing profile. If the device becomes in scope again, maybe in the future, this value will flip to 1 again, and then the servicing profile is again in charge. So this is how the instructions land on the individual device.
For step number 3, you should have some devices managed by a servicing profile at this point. So now we're going to take a closer look at what the user experience looks like on the local device, as well as what you, the admin, can expect to see in the portal. So from a user experience perspective, on the local device, we're going to be using Click to Run to download and apply the updates. This means the end user is going to receive the native Click to Run notification experience. Now, if you're not familiar with that experience, we'll have links in the description below to the docs page that outlines each of the notifications and the stages at which they apply. Also keep in mind that if you're using servicing profiles to move devices from a slower update channel or a faster update channel, the notification behavior is the same. To the end user, it'll simply look like they're receiving their monthly updates. Okay, so now we take into account any exclusion dates and deadlines on the device. So from an exclusion dates perspective, this is a feature in the portal in your servicing profile settings that you can define a period of time in which servicing profiles will not apply any actions. So if this is in place, devices won't even see notifications until this is passed. Also keep in mind though that if the device is already in progress when you set up an exclusion date, that device is likely still going to apply the updates simply because the policies and the content have already been downloaded locally. In terms of deadlines, this is based on caching. So for example, if I configure a 3-day deadline and I don't turn on my device until the Thursday after Patch Tuesday, once that content downloads on Thursday is when my deadline initiates, and now I have 3 days to complete that install. If I wait until the last minute and I do not apply the updates, the deadline will be enforced. I will receive a notification that I need to save my work and close my apps. If I do not respond to that notification, we will automatically save your work, save the state of those apps, apply the updates, and restart the applications. Now, from an admin perspective, what's the best way to monitor all the progress? Of course, go to the Servicing Profiles page in the portal. Look at the Devices tab. From here, you can see every device in your servicing profile and the individual states that they're in, including not started, in progress, and completed. From a troubleshooting perspective, if you do have devices being managed by a servicing profile and they're failing to apply updates, those failure codes are collected and sent back to the service. You as the admin can sign into the portal and review the Issues tab to oversee all of the failures that have occurred in your environment. From here, the data is aggregated based on device count and the individual failures. From there, you can click into the failures, and if we have additional resources to provide, you'll find links on the individual flyout pages. Now, also keep in mind that when a failure occurs on the local device, we do initiate automatic retries until the update applies successfully. Most commonly, what we'll see around Patch Tuesday, due to the influx in devices going out to the internet to pull down updates, you'll likely see failures downloading content. Now, over time, as more and more devices cache that content and maybe peer caching comes into play, those failures drop pretty drastically. If we look at servicing profiles globally across all of our customers, we've seen less than a 1% failure rate on average. With step number 4, we want to cover some of the additional or advanced features that are available to admins when they're managing devices with servicing profiles. So first off, we have a feature we like to call Start Small. Now, this is essentially Azure AD group support when you're configuring your device selection criteria for your profile. And this gives you the capability to be more surgical when targeting users and devices to be managed by a profile. Now, we've done an entire video on this, including a demo. We'll have that linked in the description below if you'd like to get more information on how this works. Next up, we have a feature called Rollback and Skip. And this is relatively new. It gives you the capability to select a device or multiple devices and roll them back from the current month's release, or N-0, to the previous month's release, N-1. And the skip component ensures those devices remain on N-1 until the following month's Patch Tuesday. All right, and then the third feature we'll cover here is Pause. This is available from the Overview tab in Servicing Profiles, and basically gives an admin the capability to completely pause a servicing profile, halting all actions from going out to endpoints. Now, it's important to note when you pause a profile, it remains paused until an admin comes in and clicks resume. And when a profile is paused, all servicing profile managed devices are essentially version locked from an Office perspective until that profile is unpaused. So keep that in mind as a disclaimer. As for troubleshooting tips, we often get questions about how Servicing Profiles does its evaluation. And the answer is quite simple. We're constantly reevaluating everything in the background. So expect the reports and data shown in the portal to be updated frequently throughout the day. Now, this includes things based on your selection criteria, as well as the information being sent up from your endpoints. Now, if ever an occasion came up where you needed to quickly force a full re-eval of your servicing profile, you can do so by making a subtle change to your existing servicing profile configuration. So for example, you could go to your update deadline settings and increase the slider from 3 days to 4 days and save those settings. Or alternatively, go to your device selection criteria and increase the disk space requirement from 5 GB to 6 GB and save those settings. In either case, these are some examples of subtle changes you can apply, and in doing so will force servicing profiles to reevaluate. All right, so that concludes this video. As always, we would love to hear your feedback. Either share it in the comments below, or even better, if you're in the Apps Admin Center, find and click on the feedback icon. Share your experiences, especially if you're having trouble. That all goes directly back to our development team. If you'd like to stay up to date when we release new material on this channel, go ahead and click subscribe and the notification icon. We also have a presence over on the Microsoft 365 Tech Community site, where we put out blogs and have discussions with IT admins around the world on these very same topics. For additional resources to all the material we've talked about, check out the description below. And until next time, keep on deploying.